On top of the pile lay a yarn ad featuring skeins that glowed with all the colours of a crackling fire. By supper time, the pictures were back in their places, even the chestnut puree ad, which I despised. My mother's swiftness astonished me. She had managed it while I was outside inspecting the garden with my aunt. When my aunt entered the bedroom, she put a hand on my back and whispered that I shouldn't deny a mother the right to be proud of her children. I couldn't tell her how wrong everything had gone. My aunt looked at me and gave me a squeeze. "We're expanding the plantings, and Ivan is helping, so we're fine," she said. "I'm so glad we have you home again, Olenka." My aunt had aged, as had my mother. The dog standing guard in the yard was new. Otherwise, nothing had changed since I left. A stork's nest still sat on top of the electric pole, though the birds had already flown south, and there were still dead men's jackets hanging next to the front door. One was my father's, and the other belonged to his sister's deceased husband. According to my aunt, it was good for visitors to think we had men in the house. We'd moved in with her after my father's funeral, and now I had returned to this house of lonely widows, where we gave each other flowers on Women's Day. The thought made me ask my aunt whether Boris was still making his horilka. As she fetched a bottle, I finally changed my shoes for galoshes. They were new and lightweight, maybe silicone, bought for me, presumably. The next morning, I walked to the bus stop and looked to see what was visible through the cracks in the garden fence and over it from farther down the road. There was nothing to attract attention, and no one would come to inspect this plot of land by chance. The situation might be different once the flowers were blazing red, but my aunt was right. We would need more poppies. I was an extra mouth to feed, and the previous evening I had already ordered us some 30-litre canisters of drinking water. Abroad, I'd become accustomed to drinking water constantly and completely forgotten the state of the wells here. I didn't know how I would pay for my order. I would have to abandon the way we models keep our weight in check. A thicker waist was the least of my worries. I didn't want my aunt to seize on Ivan's suggestions, to borrow money from him and not to increase the size of the poppy fields, even though I trusted him and his desire to help. A tall field of corn could conceal even a large flower planting, and our hired hand, Boris, could handle the expansion. He was Ivan's brother, and like a son to my aunt. Still, I didn't want us any more dependent on the gang Ivan worked for and to whom he delivered the compote derived from the poppies. I hadn't planned a future like this for us. We wouldn't even be talking about poppies if my face had paid off. We would have closed the compote kitchen, and I would have built my aunt a new house in place of the old one, or bought an apartment in the city. They never would have needed to worry about every sign of instability that might affect their already insufficient pension payments. I'd claimed that homesickness had brought me back. I don't know who believed that, though. I hadn't been able to send money for years. I had to fix this situation. I had to find work. I began to visit the city to look for job postings. Often a bevy of girls brimming with hope and emitting clouds of perfume rode the same bus to the palace, where bride shows were held for foreign bachelors in the conference rooms. As their destination approached, the girls with short hair would add more hairspray, and the girls with longer locks would grab their brushes, whose strokes fell in time with the rhythmic clinking of lipstick tubes, powder cases, and pocket mirrors. I'd spent years in back rooms full of similar dreams of bright futures. Only the scent cloud on this bus also contained the stench of rancid rouge. The girl sitting behind me was powdering her cheeks with a puff that hadn't been washed in years, and many of the girls' dresses featured patterns familiar from the pelts of wild cats. I listened to their conversations and wondered whether I'd have